Take this money. Go get rid of that burden in your belly. And when you are done, get the hell out of this house and never come back." My mother-in-law Eleanor's voice was as sharp and cold as steel, clashing in the dead of winter. It had been less than a week since my husband died. The dirt on his grave was still fresh, and she was already throwing a stack of bills and the address of a clinic in my face. I stood frozen, my feet glued to the cold tile floor of the house that, until a few weeks ago, I had called home. The echo of her gut-wrenching wails during the funeral still seemed to ring in my ears, but now, standing in front of me was not a mother who had just lost her beloved son, but a stranger of incredible cruelty. My trembling hand instinctively rested on my 4-month bump, where Marcus's and my first child was growing. The only seed he had left in this world was growing day by day, and she called it a burden. Just over a week ago, my life was a picture-perfect dream that any young woman would wish for. My name is Kesha. I used to be a pre-K teacher in a quiet town just outside Savannah, Georgia. My life truly changed when I met Marcus. He was a civil engineer who had come to my town for a project with his firm. He was mature, kind, and had a warmth to his words that drew you in. He said he loved my tenderness, my authenticity, my smile, and the patience I had with the children. The day he proposed, my family wept with joy. My parents are just simple pecan farmers who have worked hard all their lives, wishing only for a good husband, a safe harbor for their daughter. And Marcus, in everyone's eyes, was the safest harbor of all. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, seemed to adore me at first, too. The first time I went to her house in Chicago, she held my hand for a long time, endlessly praising how beautiful and good-natured I was. She said her family lacked nothing, only a virtuous daughter-in-law who knew how to take care of a home. She even told me to think of her as my own mother, to tell her anything without hesitation. And I believed her. I naively believed I was incredibly lucky. I believed the blessings of my ancestors had allowed me to find such a wonderful family. Our wedding was celebrated with everyone's blessings. I followed Marcus to the city to live in a spacious house that, according to him, was a wedding gift from his parents. My life in the days that followed was full of happiness. Marcus loved and pampered me to the extreme. Knowing I was new to the city, he took me out every weekend, showing me every street, every corner. He never let me do heavy work. He always said a teacher's hands were for caring for children, not for hard labor. When I gave him the news of my pregnancy, he hugged me tight, spinning me around the living room. He would rest his ear against my belly, whispering words of love to the child who had not yet fully formed. In that moment, I thought I was the happiest woman in the world. But happiness was fleeting, and the storm arrived on one fateful afternoon. Marcus said he had to leave unexpectedly for a construction site in the Rockies, promising he would be back soon. I ironed every shirt for him myself, begging him to be careful on the road. But only 2 days later, I received a call from his company. They said the SUV he was traveling in with several colleagues had suffered an accident coming down a mountain pass. No one had survived. My entire world collapsed. I do not remember how I got to the scene of the accident or how I identified his body. Everything was a blur of tears and heart-wrenching pain. I fainted. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. Beside me, my mother-in-law was sobbing. She hugged me. "Child, Marcus is really gone. How are we going to live now, you and I?" At that moment, I felt a certain comfort, thinking that in the midst of this misfortune, at least I had my mother-in-law by my side, someone to lean on. Marcus's funeral was held in an atmosphere of heavy mourning. I was like a ghost. I only knew how to kneel beside his casket, crying until I ran out of tears. But as soon as the last guests left, when only the family remained in the house, my mother-in-law changed. She stopped crying. She sat on the sofa and looked at me with a coldness I had never seen. She began to blame and reproach me. She said I was a bad omen, that I had brought bad luck to her son. "Since he married you, his business started going downhill. And look, now he's lost his life, leaving me alone, a poor widow." I was stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain myself, but she cut me off. She took the house keys and the car keys from me. She said, "From now on, I manage everything in this house. You don't decide anything on your own." I tried to be patient. I thought perhaps the grief over her son's death had unhinged her. I told myself I had to understand her, that I had to be by her side in these moments, but she took my patience for weakness. Every day she became more of a tyrant. She forced me to do all the housework, cleaning, washing, cooking for the relatives who came to offer condolences. At meals, she only gave me stale bread and water, saying, "A parasitic woman like you is lucky to have anything to put in her mouth." I gritted my teeth and swallowed my tears, comforting myself that I had to be strong for the child in my belly, for the only blood Marcus had left behind. And then, the height of cruelty arrived that morning, the moment I told you about at the beginning of the story. After throwing the stack of bills at me, she marched straight up the stairs, shoved all my clothes into an old suitcase, and threw it out the door. "Get out!" Her scream echoed through the whole house. The door slammed shut in front of me, locking away all the happy memories and throwing me onto the street. Helpless, without a cent other than the money she threw, consumed by grief, despair, and a small life growing in my exhausted body, I stood there under the relentless city sun, the crumpled bills in my trembling hand, tears falling endlessly. What should I do now? Go back to Georgia? Make my elderly parents worry and suffer? Or go to that clinic, do what she said, and give up my child? I didn't know. I really didn't know. The sun in Chicago beat down on my head, but I felt nothing but a glacial cold spreading from my heart to my entire body. I stood motionless on the busy sidewalk, still clutching the crumpled money and the paper with the clinic's address my mother-in-law had thrown in my face. The roar of traffic, the laughter, and the conversations around me seemed to belong to another world, a world I no longer belonged to. I was a lonely island, drifting in a sea of strangers, aimless, without support. Where could I go now? Home to Savannah? I couldn't. I couldn't show up with this face of misery, with this belly growing by the day, in front of my aging parents. They had been so happy for my happiness, felt so proud of their engineer son-in-law. If they knew the truth now, that their daughter was treated worse than an animal by her in-laws, they surely wouldn't be able to bear it. Or maybe I should go to that clinic. I looked at the paper in my hand. The letters seemed to dance, mocking my pain. "Get rid of that burden." Eleanor's words rang in my ears, sharp as knives. My eyes filled with tears again. This is my child, Marcus's blood, the only living memory he left me. How could she be so cruel? But if I kept the child, what would I live on? A pregnant woman, homeless, penniless, with no relatives in this huge city. What could I do? I walked and walked aimlessly. My legs were exhausted, and my belly began to ache in intervals. I stopped at a stone bench under a tree and let myself fall, hugging my stomach tight, as if afraid someone would snatch it away. I watched the people pass by. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Everyone had a place to return to. Only I was homeless. I cried. I cried for my wretched fate, for my late husband, and for my unborn child, who was already suffering the absence of a father and was about to be disowned by his own grandmother. After a long while, I dried my tears. I couldn't die. I couldn't collapse here. Even if I had to make the most painful decision, I had to check one last time. I had to make sure my child was still healthy. I didn't go to the address my mother-in-law gave me. I didn't want to set foot in that place where she had probably already arranged everything. I asked around on the street and found a small private clinic hidden in a narrow alley. The sign was faded by time. I chose this place for its discretion, and perhaps because it fit my desperate situation. The doctor who attended me was an older man with gray hair and thick glasses, but his eyes behind them were incredibly kind and perceptive. He looked at me, then at my bulging belly. His voice was deep and warm. "Sit down, miss. Where does it hurt?" I just shook my head. My voice cracked. "I want an ultrasound." He nodded without asking further questions, guiding me gently to the examination table. when the black and white image of my child appeared on the screen, when I heard the strong and regular beating of his heart. Thump, 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 thump. All the strength I had tried to build collapsed. I broke down crying again, choked sobs that I couldn't hold back. The old doctor, Dr. Holloway, according to the name embroidered on his white coat, showed no annoyance. He simply offered me a tissue in silence. He waited for me to finish crying before calmly pointing to the screen. "Your son is very healthy. He is a boy developing completely normally, without any warning signs." Then he fell silent for a long time, so long that I felt something was wrong. He turned off the monitor, helped me sit up, and asked me a question that seemed to have nothing to do with anything. "Miss, how long had you and Mr. Sterling, your husband, known each other before getting married?" I was a bit surprised, but I answered, "Almost a year." "Was there any objection from the family before the wedding?" I shook my head. "No, sir. His mother seemed to care for me very much." Dr. Holloway frowned slightly. He looked at me in a strange way, a mixture of compassion and as if he had something difficult to say. Finally, he sighed. "All right. Wait outside for a moment. I'll prescribe you some vitamins." I walked out with a heavy heart. I sat on an old plastic chair, playing with the stack of bills my mother-in-law had given me. The beat of my son's heart still echoed in my head, strong and full of life, but that only increased my pain. What should I do? At that moment, Dr. Holloway came out. He didn't hand me a prescription. Instead, he sat down next to me. He looked at the money in my hand and then at my swollen eyes. With a soft voice, he pronounced a sentence that changed my destiny completely. "Miss, do not get rid of the child." I looked up, staring at him in astonishment. "Doctor, what are you saying?" He looked me straight in the eyes. His gaze was no longer of simple compassion, but of a strange determination. "Trust me for once. Come with me to see someone. After meeting that person, you will understand everything." I was completely confused. My mind was spinning. Why was an unknown doctor telling me these things? Who was the person he wanted me to meet? And what did all this have to do with my decision? But looking at his steady gaze, his sincerity without a trace of falsehood, a ray of hope, crazy and fragile, flashed in my mind. I didn't know who the doctor wanted me to meet, nor did I understand why he said I would understand everything. But in that moment of absolute despair, the extended hand of a stranger suddenly became the only lifeline I could cling to. I sat there as if petrified for several seconds, my mind completely blank. Only Dr. Holloway's phrase echoed, sinking deep into my head. "Come with me to see someone." Who? Why now? Thousands of questions swirled in my head, but looking into his firm and benevolent eyes, I felt a strange trust. Perhaps when a person has fallen to the bottom of despair, any ray of light, however dim, is enough to cling to. I had nothing left to lose. I nodded with a weak but determined movement. "Yes, doctor, I'll go with you." Dr. Holloway said nothing more. He simply guided me silently out of the clinic, around to a small back alley. An old gray sedan was already parked there. He opened the door for me and then sat behind the wheel. The car started slowly, merging into the dense city traffic. I sat in the passenger seat, staring silently out the window. Chicago remained the same, noisy, rushed, as if no one cared about the pain of a small woman like me. I didn't ask Dr. Holloway where we were going, nor who the person we were going to meet was. I simply remained silent, leaving my fate in the hands of this unknown man, perhaps because I was too tired to think or argue anymore. The car drove for about half an hour and then turned into a fairly quiet residential area. Dr. Holloway parked in front of a small coffee shop with vibrant pink bougainvillea covering the porch. The place didn't have a big sign, just a small wooden plaque with the words, "The Velvet Bean." The interior was very cozy, with the aroma of freshly ground coffee and old books. A few customers were sitting reading or speaking in low voices. Dr. Holloway led me to a table in the farthest corner, where a man was already waiting. When that man raised his head, my heart seemed to stop. I froze. My lips moved without sound. "Tyrone?" The man was none other than Tyrone, Marcus's best friend, his brother in soul. I had seen him several times at the wedding and when he came to the house. He was a cheerful, sociable person and had always treated me very well. But why was he here? What did he have to do with all this? Tyrone stood up and pulled out a chair for me. His face no longer held his usual radiant smile. Instead, there was an expression of deep concern and remorse. "Hello, Kesha. Sit down, please. I am so sorry you had to go through all this." I sat down, my mind still spinning. I looked at Dr. Holloway and then at Tyrone. I didn't understand anything that was happening. Dr. Holloway spoke then. "Tyrone, tell her the truth. She has suffered enough." Tyrone nodded, poured me a cup of hot tea, and pushed it towards me. "Kesha, drink a little to warm up. What I'm about to tell you might be very shocking, but I ask you to stay calm." I took the cup, trembling, but didn't drink. I just stared at Tyrone, waiting. He took a deep breath. His voice turned grave and heavy. "Kesha, Marcus isn't dead." Those 3 words, "Marcus isn't dead," were like a lightning bolt that split me in two. The cup of tea fell from my hands, shattering into 1,000 pieces on the table. The hot liquid splashed everywhere, but I didn't feel the burn. I felt nothing. My ears rang. All the sounds around me disappeared. I just looked at Tyrone with my mouth open, unable to utter a word. Not dead? Then what was that funeral? Whose body did I hug? For whom did I cry until I fainted? Why? Why had everyone deceived me? "I know you can't believe it," Tyrone said with an anguished voice. "But it's the truth. That death was just a charade." "A charade?" I repeated with a voice that didn't sound like mine. "Why? Why would he do something like that? Why deceive me?" I almost screamed. Tyrone motioned for me to calm down. "Kesha, listen to me until the end. Marcus did it for a reason of force majeure." Tyrone began to recount the story. He said that about 6 months ago, Marcus's firm suffered a huge setback. A trusted partner swindled him, taking all the capital and leaving him with a massive debt of several $1,000,000. The creditors weren't normal people. They were mob enforcers. Not only did they threaten Marcus, but they also started following and intimidating his family, including me. Marcus tried to get the money by selling everything he could, but it wasn't enough. Tyrone's voice cracked. He knew that if it continued like this, not only him, but also you and the child in your belly would be in danger. Those people stop at nothing. That's why he took the most painful decision, to fake his own death. It was the only way to escape his pursuers, to protect you and the child. He went to Tyrone and Dr. Holloway, the only people he could trust, to ask for help. The body at the funeral was that of a homeless man of similar build who had died of a serious illness. We handled all the paperwork and documents with total discretion. I listened, tears streaming down my face. The pain of losing my husband seemed to revive, but this time it was mixed with shock, anger, and also a small ray of joy. He was alive. My husband was still alive. But why? Why didn't he tell me? Why did he let me suffer such extreme pain alone? Tyrone seemed to read my thoughts. "Marcus didn't dare tell you. He was afraid you wouldn't be able to bear it, that you would worry and reveal the secret. He just wanted you and the child to be absolutely safe. He gave me instructions to only tell you the truth if you were really backed into a corner." I broke down crying. It turns out everything that had happened, the pain, the loneliness, was part of his plan, a cruel plan, but one born of love and sacrifice. But then another question arose in my mind, sharp as a blade. What if my mother-in-law Eleanor also knew all this? And what if everything she had done to me wasn't the blind grief of a mother who has lost her son? That question flashed in my head, cold and terrifying, and I stopped crying. I looked up at Tyrone with eyes full of suspicion. Tyrone and my mother-in-law? Did she know about this? Tyrone's face showed a hint of confusion. He looked at Dr. Holloway as if seeking help. Dr. Holloway simply nodded slightly, indicating for him to continue. Tyrone turned back to me. His voice became hesitant, much more difficult than before. Kesha, this is more complicated than you think. Mrs. Sterling not only knew, but it was she who— He left the sentence in the air, as if he didn't dare speak the cruel truth. But I had already understood. My heart sank into a bottomless abyss. She was the mastermind, wasn't she? I whispered with a trembling but clear voice. Tyrone didn't answer, but his silence was the most forceful response. My world once again turned upside down. If a few minutes ago I was crying, moved by my husband's sacrifice, now I was trembling at an even more terrible truth. My mother-in-law, the woman I thought had turned cruel from grief, turned out to be the director of this entire tragic play. Why? I asked with a voice almost broken. Why did she do it? Marcus is her son. Why cruelly fake her own son's death and then treat her daughter-in-law and grandson like this? Tyrone sighed and offered me another tissue. Because Kesha, Mrs. Sterling's original plan wasn't how it played out. It was distorted by her own greed and cruelty. Tyrone began to tell another story, a version of the truth I could never have imagined. It was true that Marcus had financial problems. It was true that he owed a lot of money, but he wasn't being chased by the mafia. His creditors were normal business partners. They only applied legal pressure. They didn't threaten his life. The fake death plan was Marcus's idea, but his only purpose was to disappear temporarily, find a way to get the money elsewhere, and then come back to resolve everything peacefully. He told his mother the whole plan, hoping she would stay to take care of and protect me and the child in my belly. But Marcus trusted his mother too much, Tyrone said with a bitter voice. Eleanor saw in this plan an opportunity to seize everything and get rid of what she considered a burden. She turned Marcus's plan into her own conspiracy. She told Marcus that the creditors had come to the house, that they were extremely dangerous people, that they wouldn't spare me or the pregnancy. She painted a picture so bleak and terrifying to force Marcus into a corner so that he would completely believe that cutting all contact and disappearing entirely was the only way to protect his wife and child. And as for kicking you out of the house and forcing you to abort, Tyrone hesitated. That was entirely Eleanor's idea. She wanted to seize the chance to get rid of you. She never truly accepted you. She always looked down on your background, believing you weren't worthy of her son, and the baby in your belly. To her, it wasn't her grandson. It was just an obstacle, a thorn that had to be plucked so that in the future Marcus could start his life over with another woman, a richer one, who could help her pay the debt. I listened with my whole body frozen. Every word Tyrone said was like a red-hot iron needle piercing my heart. It turns out her cruelty wasn't an act. It was real. Her grief over the loss of her son was fake, but her coldness and cruelty towards me were genuine. She had used her own son's tragedy to carry out her selfish plan. Not only had she deceived me, but also Marcus and everyone else. How can a mother be so ruthless? She preferred her son to live tormented, full of remorse, and for her own grandson not to be born, just to satisfy her calculations and her class prejudices. I couldn't cry anymore. The pain seemed to have exceeded the limit of tears. Now in my heart, only extreme indignation and a feeling of infinite disgust remained. "And where is Marcus now?" I asked with a hoarse voice. Tyrone shook his head. "I don't know exactly either. After arranging everything, he left following Eleanor's instructions. He thinks he's doing the right thing to protect you. He has no idea that at home his own mother is pushing you toward death." Tyrone took an old phone out of his pocket. "This is the phone Marcus used to contact me before he left. He wiped all the data, but I think some trace might remain. He told me, if anything bad happens to Kesha, give it to her." I took the phone, trembling. It was like Pandora's box, containing both hope and painful secrets. I knew that from that moment on, my fight wouldn't just be to find my husband. It would also be a fight to unmask the true face of a woman wearing the mask of a devoted mother, to claim justice for myself, for my son, and for the husband who was being deceived by his own mother. But I didn't know that by opening that phone, I would discover an even more terrible truth, a conspiracy that not only targeted me, but also Marcus's life. Leaving the Velvet Bean, my heart was a whirlwind of emotions. The feeling of having recovered my husband from the dead had barely settled when it was crushed by the truth about my mother-in-law's demonic face. I didn't go back to the miserable room I had temporarily rented. It was no longer safe. Dr. Holloway, very attentive, had gotten me a new place to stay, a small apartment in a quiet residential building. He said, "Marcus asked me to prepare it in advance in case something went wrong." Those words pricked my heart again. He had calculated every step to protect me, but he couldn't foresee the cruelty of his own mother. I sat alone in the clean, tidy apartment. The twilight light filtered through the window, drawing bright streaks on the floor, but it couldn't warm the coldness in my heart. I looked at Marcus's old phone on the table. It lay motionless, black and shiny like a mysterious door to a world I had never known. I was afraid, very afraid, that opening it would mean facing another painful truth, but I knew I couldn't escape. I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and pressed the power button. The screen lit up asking for a password. I tried Marcus's birth date, mine, our anniversary, all incorrect. I was about to give up when I remembered a series of numbers Marcus had mentioned jokingly. "This is the most important number of my life. If anything ever happens, use it." At that moment, I just laughed, thinking he was joking. I tremblingly entered that series of numbers. With a click, the screen unlocked. That number was our son's due date. My tears fell uncontrollably again. Until the very last moment, in his mind, there was only me and our child. The phone interface was completely empty. No contacts, no messages, no photos. Just as Tyrone said, Marcus had wiped everything. Disappointed, I was about to turn it off when I saw a strange app with a small notebook icon called Memories. I tapped on it. It asked for a password again. This time, I didn't have to think hard. I typed my name, Kesha, and the last secret door opened. Inside, there were no sentimental diaries, but audio files carefully ordered by date, accompanied by brief notes. I pressed the first file recorded about 6 months ago. Marcus and his mother's voices were heard. "Mom, I'm sorry. Really, I've disappointed you." "Well, it's done. At this point, talking is useless. Listen to me. There is only one way to get rid of those creditors. You have to disappear." I kept listening. Each audio fragment revealed the entire process by which Eleanor had manipulated and pressured Marcus to accept the fake death plan. She had exaggerated the danger of the creditors, painting a scenario where the baby and I would be kidnapped and tortured. She had attacked Marcus's weakest point, the unconditional love he felt for me. But what left me paralyzed was an audio file almost at the end, recorded just 1 day before Marcus's accident. In that recording, besides Marcus and Eleanor's voices, there was another male voice, deep and gravelly, that of her brother, whom I had never met. "Don't worry, sister. I've already arranged everything. Have Marcus follow that highway. When he reaches the exact point, the truck will accidentally lose its brakes. There won't be a trace left. The police will declare it a tragic accident." Eleanor's voice sounded chillingly cold. "Good. Make sure it's clean. As for his little wife and that burden, once Marcus is gone, I'll take care of them myself." I sat motionless in the chair. The phone fell to the floor with a dull thud. My ears rang. The blood froze in my veins. Accident. Lose brakes accidentally. This was no longer a fake death plan. It was a conspiracy to murder. She, the woman I called mother-in-law, didn't just want to fake her son's death. She really wanted to kill him. She wanted her son to die for real so she could keep the entire fortune, so she could get rid of me and the grandson she hated. A wave of nausea rose in my throat. I ran to the bathroom and vomited violently. This truth was too cruel, too horrible, beyond anything I could have imagined. I thought she was evil, but I couldn't imagine she was a demon in human skin, willing to kill the son she had given birth to. I let myself fall onto the cold bathroom floor, shaking from head to toe. Now I understood everything. Marcus wasn't hiding. He was in real danger. Maybe he had realized something strange in his mother's plan, and that's why he recorded the conversations. Maybe he hadn't followed the route they had mapped out for him. But where was he? Was he safe? I picked up the phone. My hand was still trembling. I knew I couldn't stay here collapsed. I had to find him. I had to save him. This fight was no longer to claim justice. It was a fight to save my husband's life from the claws of a diabolical mother. But where to start? When all leads seemed to have been cut, the shock and horror of discovering my mother-in-law's plot to murder my husband almost paralyzed me. I stood motionless on the cold bathroom floor, mind blank, not knowing what to do. Save Marcus, but how? I didn't even know where he was. Call the police? But the only proof was a recording on an old phone. Would they believe me? Or would they think I was a widow in shock, speaking incoherently? I felt like I was in the middle of a dense fog, with no way out, no ray of light. Just at that moment, the doorbell rang. I jumped. Who was it at this hour? Could it be Eleanor's men coming to take care of me? I held my breath and crept to the door to look through the peephole. Outside was Tyrone. He looked very impatient, constantly looking around. I hesitated for a moment, but decided to open it. As soon as he saw me, Tyrone sighed in relief. My God, Kesha, why didn't you answer the phone? Are you okay? I just shook my head, let him in, and locked the door. I said nothing, simply handing him Marcus's phone with my hand still trembling. Tyrone took it, looking at me strangely. I opened the Memories app and pointed to the last recording. He put on the headphones, and his face gradually changed, from surprise to astonishment, and then to fury. When the recording ended, he took off the headphones. His eyes were bloodshot. His hand gripped the phone so hard his veins stood out. "Damn animals!" he hissed through his teeth. I suspected something was wrong. Eleanor's attitude was too calm, too calculating, but I never imagined she would be capable of doing this to her own son. "Tyrone, what do we do now?" I asked with a desperate voice. "I'm afraid Marcus is in danger. We have to find him." Tyrone paced the room, trying to calm down. He thought for a moment and then said, "Kesha, listen to me. The first thing is not to act rashly. If Eleanor finds out we've discovered her plan, she won't hesitate to use any means to silence us, and Marcus will be in even more danger. Second, I'll try to contact Marcus. Before he left, we agreed on some secret signals in case of emergency. I'm not sure if it will work, but we have to try." "And me?" I asked. Tyrone looked at me with determination. "You have to keep acting. You have to play the part of a pitiful, grieving wife who completely believes the story her mother-in-law has spun. You have to make her believe you're still in the palm of her hand. Only then will she let her guard down, and we'll have time to act." Tyrone's words were like a ray of light in my chaotic mind. It was true. I couldn't collapse now. I had to be calm, be strong. I had to become the best actress to deceive that demon. The next day, I called my mother-in-law. I cried on the phone, telling her I had thought better of it, that I couldn't live without my child, that I wouldn't abort. But I also told her I was too broken to stay in that house. I told her I would look for a quiet place to carry my pregnancy, to wait for the baby's birth. Eleanor, on the other end of the line, after a moment of silence, surprisingly agreed. "Well, if that's what you've decided, do what you want. Consider it a chance I'm giving you." She hung up. I knew she didn't accept out of compassion, but because my disappearance would make her plan even more perfect. A widow so stricken she leaves never to return. A script too believable. In the following days, Tyrone and I began a race against the clock. Tyrone, through his contacts, tried to follow the few clues Marcus might have left. For my part, I began my own investigation. I remembered every little detail of my days with Marcus, loose phrases, places he had mentioned, friends he saw infrequently, and then a vague memory flashed in my mind. He mentioned a place where his maternal grandmother had spent her last years. He said the place was very peaceful, far from the world. He even joked, "If we're ever really tired, we'll retire here, okay?" At the time, I just laughed, but now my instinct told me there was something about that place. I quickly searched online for information. It was called St. Saviour's Retreat, deep in the mountains of Montana, nearly 1,000 miles from the city, a place practically isolated from the outside world. Could he be there? I told Tyrone. He also thought it was a very valuable lead. Marcus loved his grandmother very much. That might be the only safe place he thought of, Tyrone said. But the road there is very long and dangerous. And you're pregnant. You can't go. Let me go. I shook my head. No, I have to go. I have to see him with my own eyes. Besides, if only you go, he might not show himself. But if I'm there, maybe he'll trust more. After arguing for a while, Tyrone finally accepted, but on the condition that Dr. Holloway accompany us to look after me. The journey to rescue my husband had officially begun, but I didn't know that this trip to the rugged mountains wasn't just a search, but another trap waiting for us. And the trapper, this time, was someone I could never have imagined. The decision was made. We couldn't lose a second. That same night, we prepared for the trip to Montana. Tyrone took care of renting a spacious and discreet minivan. Dr. Holloway meticulously prepared a complete medical kit, from pregnancy medications and vitamins to first aid supplies. I, for my part, only packed a couple of loose-fitting outfits and, most importantly, Marcus's old phone. It was my amulet, the only proof that could change the course of events. At dawn the next day, when the city was still wrapped in morning mist, our car departed silently, leaving behind the noisy Chicago and its intrigues. I sat in the back seat with my hand instinctively on my belly. My little one seemed to feel his mother's tension. He gave me a gentle kick as if to comfort me. I looked out the window. The tall buildings were left behind, giving way to green fields and the familiar dirt roads of the countryside. An indescribable feeling washed over me. I was on my way to save my husband, whom everyone assumed was dead, a journey as absurd as it was heroic. During the ride, we barely spoke. Dr. Holloway turned around occasionally to ask if I was tired, if I needed to rest. Tyrone concentrated on driving with a tense and determined face. Every now and then, he looked at me in the rearview mirror with a gaze full of concern and a touch of remorse. I knew he blamed himself for not recognizing Eleanor's true face sooner, for leaving me to suffer alone. The trip lasted almost 2 days. The landscape changed constantly, from fertile plains to the hills of the Midwest, and finally to the winding and dangerous mountain roads of the Rockies. The deeper we went, the purer and colder the air became. Small stone towns clung to the mountainsides. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, a peaceful scene that contrasted completely with the storm raging inside me. Finally, on a gray afternoon, after asking for directions several times, we arrived at the foot of the mountain where the small trail up to St. Saviour's Retreat began. The retreat clung to the summit, appearing and disappearing among the clouds. The road was just a narrow, paved path, steep and slippery. "The car can't go up. We'll have to walk," Tyrone said, looking at the steep slope. "Kesha, can you make it?" I nodded without hesitation. "I can. Even if I have to crawl, I'll get there." We began the ascent. Dr. Holloway walked by my side, always ready to hold me. Tyrone went ahead, pushing aside the branches blocking the way. My belly, now 5 months along, made walking increasingly difficult. With every step, I felt short of breath. But every time I thought of Marcus, that he might be up there, alone and perhaps in danger, I found the strength to continue. After almost an hour struggling against the slope, we finally saw the ancient gate of the retreat before us. It wasn't large, built entirely of stone and wood, with a solemn air and covered in moss. The silence was such that you could hear the falling leaves and the murmur of a stream in the distance. A couple of elderly caretakers were sweeping leaves in the courtyard. Seeing us, they simply nodded respectfully and continued their work. We went directly to the main chapel. The Reverend, a man over 70 with white hair and beard, was meditating in front of the altar. Seeing us, he slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were kind and bright. "Peace be with you. Pilgrims coming from so far must be tired," he said with a warm, resonant voice. Tyrone clasped his hands respectfully. "Reverend, we have come looking for a person. His name is Marcus. He might have come to stay here a week ago." The Reverend looked at us in silence, one by one. His gaze lingered on me and my bulging belly for a long time. Finally, he shook his head. "I'm sorry, Pilgrim, I have never heard that name, and lately we haven't had any guests asking to stay." My heart sank. All the hope, all the effort of the climb seemed to have vanished. We had been wrong. Marcus wasn't here. I was so disappointed I almost fell. Dr. Holloway quickly supported me. Just at that moment, a young novice came running in, clasped his hands, and addressed the Reverend. "Father, the guest in the West Wing cell asked me to go down to the village to buy some medicine." The Reverend nodded. "Go, son." The novice turned to leave, but Tyrone stopped him. "Wait a moment, young man. Could you tell me what the guest in the West Wing looks like?" The novice answered innocently. "He's tall, seems very kind. He's only been here a few days. He said he came to find peace. Oh, and he told me if anyone asked, to say there was no one here." My heart beat wildly. It was him. It had to be him. Tyrone and I looked at each other, unable to hide our joy. We quickly thanked the Reverend and headed toward the West Wing. But just as we were leaving the chapel, a familiar and chilling voice sounded behind us. "Looking for Marcus? No need to search. He's not here." We spun around. There, leaning against an old yew tree, was Dr. Holloway, but his look was no longer kind and benevolent. In its place was a cold, mysterious, and dangerous smile. In that instant, time seemed to stop. I stood paralyzed, staring at Dr. Holloway, the man I had trusted, in whose hands I had placed my fate. The smile on his lips was crooked, icy, completely foreign to the image of the kindly doctor I had known. The entire peaceful atmosphere of the ancient retreat suddenly turned oppressive, charged with danger. Tyrone was the first to react. He took a step forward, placing himself between the doctor and me, his voice tense. "Dr. Holloway, what does this mean?" Dr. Holloway didn't answer Tyrone. His eyes were locked on me. A look I now recognized not as compassion, but as the triumph of a hunter watching his prey fall into the trap. "Child, you are smarter than I thought," he said with his voice still deep and warm, but now with a shade of mockery that froze my blood. "I thought you would docilely go to the clinic your mother-in-law indicated. I didn't expect you to end up in mine. It truly is destiny." "It was you," I exclaimed with a trembling voice. "You set this trap. You brought me here on purpose." Dr. Holloway laughed, a dry laugh that echoed in the silence of the retreat courtyard. "Very smart, but it's too late. Marcus isn't here. He has never been here. This place is just a trap I prepared to lure you." "Why?" roared Tyrone. "You were a friend of Marcus's father. Why are you doing this? Why ally with Eleanor to hurt him?" "Friend?" Dr. Holloway sneered with contempt. "Marcus's father and I were never friends. I hate him. I hate him to the core, and I have waited for this opportunity for 30 years. Then he began to recount a story from the past, a story full of hate and betrayal. It turned out that Dr. Holloway and Marcus's father had been best friends in their youth, starting a business from scratch. But when the company began to prosper, Marcus's father betrayed him, stealing all his shares and leaving him on the street without a cent. Not only that, but he also used tricks to steal the woman Dr. Holloway loved most, who would later become Marcus's mother. "That man took everything from me," hissed Dr. Holloway with bloodshot eyes. "It took me years to rebuild my career to get where I am today. I swore I would make his whole family pay. I would make them taste the feeling of losing everything, just like me back then." His revenge plan had been prepared with diabolical precision. He approached Eleanor, taking advantage of her greed and stupidity to turn her into a pawn in his game. He was the one pulling the strings, who taught Eleanor how to manipulate Marcus, how to stage the fake death. "She thinks she's very smart, but she's nothing more than a stupid puppet," mocked Dr. Holloway. "And Marcus? He's just like his father, stupid and gullible. He walked right into the cage I prepared for him. "So where is Marcus?" I asked, my voice broken by despair. Dr. Holloway looked at me. His smile became even more sadistic. "He is in a very safe place, a place from which he can never return. And you, my dear child, you and that burden you carry in your belly will soon be reunited with him." Just as he finished speaking, 4 burly, menacing-looking men emerged from behind the trees, surrounding us. Tyrone quickly pushed me behind him, adopting a defensive stance. "What do you want?" yelled Tyrone. Dr. Holloway said nothing, only nodded his head. The 4 men lunged at us. Tyrone fought bravely. He knocked one down, but against 4 armed men, he was quickly overwhelmed. One of them hit him hard on the back of the neck with a baton. Tyrone collapsed, unconscious. "Tyrone!" I screamed, trying to run to him, but 2 other men grabbed me tight. I fought, scratched, but it was useless. What strength can a pregnant woman have against 2 robust men? Dr. Holloway approached slowly. He took a syringe with a yellowish liquid out of his jacket pocket. "Quiet, child," he said with a sickly sweet, repulsive voice. "It won't hurt. Just an instant, and all your worries will be over." I watched the sharp needle approaching. Panic seized me. No, I can't die. My son, I have to protect my son. I gathered all my strength and bit hard on the arm of the man holding me. The man screamed in pain and loosened his grip. Seizing the opportunity, I broke free and ran desperately toward the main chapel, screaming endlessly, "Help! Help! Murderers!" But the retreat was too deserted. My cries for help only echoed and got lost in the silence. They caught up to me quickly. Just when one of them was about to grab me, a figure in a brown robe suddenly appeared, using a staff to strike the man's hand with force. It was the Reverend. Despite his age and frailty, his gaze was severe and full of authority. He placed himself between them and me, shouting, "Peace be with you! This is a sacred place. You cannot commit impure acts here." Dr. Holloway frowned, somewhat surprised by the monk's intervention, but then sneered. "Old man, if you value your life, step aside. This is none of your business." The Reverend didn't flinch. "Pilgrim, you are still in time to repent. He who sows wind reaps storms. When will this chain of vengeance end?" While they argued, I realized something. Marcus's old phone. I still had it in my coat pocket. I took it out trembling and secretly opened the Memories app and pressed the record button. I didn't know if it would do any good, but it was the only thing I could do. But it seemed heaven hadn't closed all doors for my son and me. In the distance, the sound of a siren got closer and louder. The sound of a police car broke the deadly silent air of the retreat. Dr. Holloway and his henchmen froze. Their faces turned pale. The sadistic confidence on his face was quickly replaced by panic. "Damn it! How is there police here?" he muttered, then turned to his men and shouted, "Move! Fast!" They didn't dare waste time. They helped their companion injured by the Reverend and ran toward the back, disappearing quickly into the dense forest. I leaned against one of the wooden columns of the chapel, feeling my legs give way. If it hadn't been for the Reverend and the sudden police siren, I don't know what would have become of my son and me. A few minutes later, a group of uniformed officers, along with several plainclothes agents, ran into the courtyard. The one in the lead, a lieutenant with a firm face, approached quickly. "We received a tip about a possible homicide here. Is everyone okay?" The Reverend clasped his hands. "Peace be with you. Thanks to your timely arrival, this young woman was about to suffer great danger." The lieutenant looked at me, and then at Tyrone, who lay unconscious on the ground. "Call an ambulance. Get the injured man to the hospital immediately," he ordered a subordinate. Then he turned to me with a softer voice. "Miss, don't be afraid. It's all over. Can you tell us what happened?" I was still shaking, but I took a deep breath to calm myself. I told him everything, how Dr. Holloway had tricked me into coming, his revenge plan, and the attack we had just suffered. I didn't forget to give the Lieutenant Marcus's old phone. "Officer, inside here are very important recordings, not only about the murder attempt my mother-in-law planned against my husband, but also the conversation from a moment ago with Dr. Holloway. I managed to record it." The lieutenant took the phone. His face became extremely serious as he listened to me. He immediately handed it to a forensic technician. "Analyze and recover all data immediately. These are crucial pieces of evidence." The ambulance arrived and took Tyrone. Before they left, a paramedic said he only had a mild concussion, nothing life-threatening. I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They took me to the local station to give a detailed statement. The Reverend also went as a witness. On the way, the lieutenant sat with me in the car. He introduced himself as Lieutenant Booker, head of the homicide squad. "Ms. Sterling, actually, we've been following your family's case for several weeks," he said. To my surprise, after receiving the report from Mr. Baines, Tyrone, and the initial evidence from the phone, we realized it wasn't a simple family matter. It was related to an organized crime ring. Lieutenant Booker explained that Dr. Holloway, whose real name was Vance Holloway, wasn't just a doctor. He led an organization specializing in fraud, staged accidents, and settling scores. Marcus's father had been a member of that organization. The scam 30 years ago was actually an internal purge. Marcus's father betrayed him, kept all the illegal money, and let Holloway pay for it in prison. Holloway's revenge plan not only targeted your husband's family, but also aimed to recover the fortune from back then, Booker said. Your mother-in-law, Eleanor, was just a pawn he used, and your husband, Marcus, was the main prey. "So, is Marcus safe, Lieutenant?" I asked anxiously. Booker looked at me with a complex expression. "We still haven't been able to locate him, but we are sure of one thing. He didn't go abroad, as your mother-in-law said. He is still in the country and probably being held somewhere." My heart shrank. Fear seized me again. "But how did you know to come to the retreat in time?" Booker smiled. "Thanks to a text message. This morning we received an anonymous message from an unknown number. It only said, 'Saint Saviour's Retreat. Save someone.' We moved out immediately. Luckily, we arrived in time." An anonymous message. Who? Who knew Holloway's plan and warned the police? A whirlwind of questions returned to my head, but whoever it was, I owed them my life. That person had saved my son and me. The investigation accelerated. Based on the recordings on Marcus's phone, the police had enough evidence to issue a national arrest warrant against Vance Holloway and his accomplices. His picture appeared in all the media. Eleanor and her brother, upon hearing the news, collapsed. They couldn't believe the person they had trusted was the family's mortal enemy and a dangerous criminal. They confessed everything, from how Holloway approached and manipulated them to the accident plan. But Marcus's whereabouts remained a mystery. Each day that passed, my hope diminished a little. I was afraid of never seeing him again. What would my son and I do? But a week later, when I was about to lose all hope, an unexpected call from a hospital in a remote mountain county lit a faint ray of light. They said they had just admitted a traffic accident victim with amnesia, with no ID. The only identifying mark was a long scar on his left arm. A long scar on his left arm. My heart stopped for an instant. I remembered that scar perfectly. A souvenir from college, when Marcus fell off a motorcycle once while taking me for a ride. It had become an unmistakable mark. "Is the scar near the elbow?" I asked, trembling, clinging to that fragile hope. "Yes, miss," replied the nurse on the other end of the line. "The patient has multiple traumas, especially to the head, which has caused temporary amnesia. He has woken up, but doesn't remember who he is. He doesn't remember anything." I didn't hear anything else the nurse said. My ears rang. Tears streamed down my face. This time, they were tears of joy and hope. He was alive. My husband was really alive. I quickly broke the news to Lieutenant Booker. He immediately sent 2 inspectors with me to that hospital to confirm the identity. The trip to that county hospital was even longer than the one to the retreat, but I felt no fatigue whatsoever. My heart only beat with the anxious anticipation of seeing him again, of seeing him in flesh and blood. When we arrived, it was getting late. The hospital was small, old, and poorly equipped. I followed the nurse's directions, quickening my pace. The door to room 102 opened slowly. There, on a white iron bed, was him. Although his face was gaunt, thinner and his head bandaged, I recognized him instantly. The same high forehead, the straight nose, and the thin lips I loved so much. He was sitting up, propped against the pillows, staring blankly out the window, an empty gaze without a soul. "Marcus!" I called softly, my voice cracking. He turned slowly and looked at me with the eyes of a complete stranger, a look without a shred of recognition. He looked at me and then at my bulging belly with curiosity but without recognizing me. My heart shattered. He had really forgotten me. He had forgotten the wife carrying his son in her belly. I approached and sat on the edge of the bed. I reached out, trying to touch his arm where the familiar scar was, but he withdrew his hand slightly, a reflex defense against a stranger. "Excuse me, who are you?" he asked with a hoarse, weak voice. I tried to hold back a sob, forcing a smile. I'm Kesha. I'm your wife." He frowned with an expression of disbelief. "My wife? I don't remember anything." The inspectors at the door said nothing, only watching in silence. I knew it wasn't time to cry. I had to help him remember. I started telling him our story, from the first time we met in town, our dates, the day he proposed, our happy wedding. I spoke to him about the son we were going to have, how happy he had been. The more I spoke, the more I cried. He just listened in silence. His gaze remained lost, but there seemed to be a slight agitation. After I finished, a doctor came in. He said Marcus's injury was very complex. Memory recovery could take a long time and might not even recover completely. Hearing that, my heart sank again, but I didn't allow myself to despair. As long as he was alive, as long as he was here by my side, even if he didn't remember me, I would never give up. In the following days, I asked to stay at the hospital to take care of Marcus. I didn't want to be apart from him for a second. Every day I patiently told him our old stories, showed him our photos, cooked him the dishes he used to love, hoping a familiar taste might awaken something. But the answer was always his silence and empty stare. Meanwhile, the police investigation was advancing by leaps and bounds. Based on Eleanor's statement and the gathered evidence, they had narrowed down Holloway's possible hideout. Lieutenant Booker told me Holloway was an old, cunning fox, that he wouldn't be easy to catch, but he also believed justice, though slow, always arrives. One afternoon, while I was peeling an apple for Marcus, he spoke suddenly. "You say you are my wife. Then why am I here alone? Why hasn't anyone else come to see me?" His question froze me. I had never told him about his mother and Dr. Holloway's conspiracy. I feared it would be too big a shock for him in his current state. I only told him the family was busy with important matters and couldn't come. But it seemed that even though he had lost his memory, his instinct remained intact. He looked at me, and his gaze was no longer that of a complete stranger. There was a nuance of scrutiny. Are you hiding something from me?" I didn't know how to answer. I just lowered my head and kept peeling the apple in silence. I didn't know that very question would be the key to opening a locked door of memory, and that the truth he was about to remember would be linked to an even more surprising secret: the identity of the person who tipped off the police to save me that day. Marcus's question rumbled in my mind, preventing me from finding peace. He had lost his memory, but his instinct seemed incredibly sharp. I knew I couldn't hide it from him forever. However painful the truth might be, he had the right to know. But how to tell him when every detail of the story could be a stab wound to his already fragile mind? I decided to start with the simplest part. That night, after the nurse checked him, I sat next to him on the bed and took his hand. "Marcus, I know you have many questions. I'm not going to hide anything else from you, but I need you to promise me that whatever you hear, you will stay calm, okay?" He looked at me still with a hint of doubt, but finally nodded slightly. I began to speak slowly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I didn't tell him immediately about his mother and Dr. Holloway's murder plot. I only told him about his firm's difficulties, his decision to fake his death to protect me. I told him my pain thinking I had lost him forever. I told him how his mother had treated me afterward. The more I spoke, the more unable I was to hold back the tears. Marcus listened in silence. His hand, in mine, tightened slightly. He said nothing, but I saw in his empty eyes how waves of emotion were beginning to form. "So, my mother kicked you out of the house and forced you to get rid of our son?" He finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, incredulous. I nodded. Tears fell again. "But I didn't do it. I kept our son." He looked at my belly and then at me, with an incredibly complex expression, a mixture of pain, guilt, and a hint of gratitude. He slowly raised his hand as if to touch my belly, but withdrew it halfway. "I am a terrible husband," he murmured. It was the first time since he woke up that he used the pronoun I to refer to himself. A tiny change, but one that ignited a great hope in me. Perhaps his memory was coming back. A few days later, Marcus's health improved notably. He could walk around the room by himself. Every day I was by his side, continuing with our stories. It seemed sweet memories were gradually filling the void in his mind. He started remembering scattered fragments, the image of my radiant smile on our wedding day, the feeling of our son's first kick in my belly. Each time he squeezed my hand tightly, asking for forgiveness over and over. Meanwhile, outside, the hunt for Holloway continued relentlessly. Lieutenant Booker told me Holloway was an extremely cunning criminal. He changed hideouts constantly, making the law enforcement's job very difficult. But he also assured me the net was tightening, that his capture wouldn't take long. One morning, while I was reading a book to Marcus, he sat up suddenly, clutching his head with both hands, face contorted with pain. "Marcus, what's wrong?" I exclaimed, alarmed, holding him. He didn't answer, just closed his eyes tight, muttering unintelligible words. "The truck, that road, Holloway." Then he opened his eyes wide and looked at me. His gaze was no longer empty, but of pure horror and recognition. Kesha, I remember," he said with a trembling voice. "I remember everything. That day wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill me." His memory had returned, not the sweet memories, but the most terrifying of all. He recounted that on the day of the accident, while driving along the lonely mountain road his mother had indicated, he felt something was wrong. He had secretly checked the location on his phone and discovered that road didn't lead to the place his mother had told him. At that very instant, he received a strange text message. "Turn around immediately. It's a trap." But it was already too late. A truck appeared from behind at full speed and rammed his SUV. "I only had time to turn the wheel and launch the car down the ravine," Marcus said, still shaking. "After that, I don't remember anything else until I woke up in this hospital." A strange message. "Who sent it to you?" I asked, my heart in a fist. Marcus frowned, trying to remember. "I don't know. It was a number I didn't have saved, but I remember before leaving I gave my backup phone number to someone I trusted, who could help you if something happened to me. I told him, if he couldn't contact me, to alert the police." I froze. Who was that person? The person who sent the warning message to Marcus was the same one who tipped off the police to rescue me at the retreat. This person knew Holloway's entire plan, but had been helping us secretly from the shadows. Who was this mysterious hero, and why was he doing it? The terrifying memory of the accident plunged Marcus into a state of great agitation. He wouldn't stop talking about the truck, the mountain road, and the mysterious warning message. With great difficulty, together with the nurses, we managed to calm him down and administer a sedative. Seeing him asleep in the bed, face still marked by fear, I felt a sharp pain in my heart for the horrible things he had had to go through, and all of it alone. As soon as Marcus fell asleep, I called immediately to inform Lieutenant Booker. He was very surprised to learn Marcus had recovered his memory. "Excellent," he said. "This is a crucial turning point. Marcus's testimony will be the most direct and compelling evidence to charge Vance Holloway and his accomplices with attempted murder. Stay by his side, take care of him, and encourage him. We'll send someone to take his official statement soon." But what intrigued me most was the identity of that mysterious person. I asked Marcus about it when he was calmer. He frowned, struggling to search his damaged memory. He couldn't remember who it was. "Kesha," he said with a helpless voice. "I only remember He was an old friend, someone I trusted a lot but whom I had lost touch with. I ran into him by chance a few days before everything happened. I felt something didn't add up in my mother's plan, so I gave him the backup number and asked him to watch over you. An old friend he had lost touch with. The information was too vague, but I was sure this person played a crucial role in the whole case. Not only had he saved Marcus's and my lives, but he probably knew other secrets we still didn't know. In the following days, while we waited for Marcus's full recovery, we spent time truly together, without deceit, without secrets. We remembered old times, talked about the son about to be born. The pain and fear seemed to have united us more, making our love deeper and stronger than ever. A week later, Lieutenant Booker and some inspectors came to the hospital to take Marcus's official statement. He recounted the whole event with detail and clarity. His testimony matched perfectly with the evidence the police had gathered. With this testimony, we have sufficient basis to issue an international arrest warrant against Vance Holloway, Booker said. He won't be able to escape. Meanwhile, back in our city, Eleanor and her brother's trial was held. With irrefutable evidence, both received fair sentences for fraud and conspiracy to harm others. I didn't attend the trial. For me, it was all over. I only hoped they could use the rest of their lives in prison to repent for their sins. Our life was slowly returning to normal. Marcus's health improved rapidly. He could walk by himself, and his memory was almost completely restored. The only thing was, he still couldn't remember who that mysterious friend was. It was like an untied knot in our hearts. Until one afternoon, while collecting Marcus's belongings that the hospital had kept since his admission, I found something small in his jacket pocket. It was a wooden keychain with a finely carved maple leaf. I took it, feeling it looked familiar. I had seen it somewhere. I showed the keychain to Marcus. He took it, turned it over and over, and suddenly his eyes lit up. "The maple leaf. The Maple Cafe," he muttered. "That's it. I met him there." His memory flowed like a river. That person is Dante." "Dante?" I was stunned. "Impossible. Tyrone has been with me this whole time helping me look for you. How could he be the mysterious helper? If he knew everything from the beginning, why didn't he tell me?" No, the Dante you know." Marcus hurried to explain. "Not Tyrone. This is Dante. Dante was my best friend in college, but then his family moved abroad and we lost touch. I ran into him by chance at that coffee shop." Dante, a completely unknown name, but why did he help us? And why did he choose to do it in silence? Just at that moment, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment but answered. "Hello, Kesha. It's Dante." A male voice, deep and unknown, sounded on the other end. "I think the time has come for us to meet." I froze. The mysterious hero had finally revealed himself. But would this meeting bring answers or open the door to another shocking secret? The unexpected call from the man named Dante left me as shocked as I was expectant. After so many days of speculation, the silent hero had finally decided to show himself. I agreed to meet him. The appointment was set for the following afternoon at the same Maple Cafe where he and Marcus had reunited by chance. Marcus wanted to accompany me, but I refused. I wanted to face this person alone, hear the answers to all the questions that had accumulated inside me for myself. I arrived at the meeting place a few minutes early. The coffee shop was small and cozy, decorated in a vintage style. I chose a table near the window where I could watch people pass by. My heart beat fast, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Who was this man after all? And what was his true purpose? At the agreed time, a tall man, dressed in a simple but elegant white shirt, entered the coffee shop, glanced around, and walked straight to my table. His face was firm, intelligent, and his deep eyes stood out, seeming to harbor many stories. "Hello, Kesha. I'm Dante," he said, extending his hand. His voice was deep and warm, exactly like the one I had heard on the phone. I shook his hand, feeling the warmth and firmness of his grip. "Hello. Thank you for coming, and thank you for everything." Dante smiled, a slight smile, but with a touch of sadness. "Don't mention it. I only did what I believed was right." We sat down. After a few seconds of awkward silence, I went straight to the point. "Mr. Dante, I really don't understand why you helped us and how you knew Dr. Holloway's plans so well." Dante didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window with a lost gaze, as if reliving a long history. Finally, he turned to me and revealed a truth that left me even more stunned than when I discovered my mother-in-law's conspiracy. "Because, Kesha, Vance Holloway is my biological father." I felt like an electric current ran through my body. Biological father. Dr. Holloway, the demon who had destroyed my family, was the father of the man who had saved our lives. It was too absurd, too illogical. How? How is that possible?" I stammered. "If he's your father, why did you go against him?" "Why did I go against him?" Dante continued for me, his voice laden with bitterness. "Because he doesn't deserve to be called a father. He is a monster, and I know that better than anyone." Dante began his story. He was the result of an extramarital affair between Holloway and his mother. His mother was deceived and abandoned by him right after Dante was born. His childhood was a succession of days lived in scorn and rejection by others. It wasn't until he grew older that he discovered the truth about his father. He sought him out not to receive affection, but to find an answer. But he only found coldness and denial. "He saw me as a stain, an annoying existence," Dante said, clenching his fists. "But I didn't give up. I have been following him secretly for years, collecting evidence of his crimes. I wanted to expose him, make him pay for what he did to my mother and his other victims." The chance encounter with Marcus was a turning point. When he heard Marcus talk about his financial troubles and his mother's strange behavior, Dante suspected his father's hand was behind it. He advised Marcus to be careful, and that's why Marcus entrusted him with the backup phone number. "When Marcus stopped responding, I knew something bad had happened," Dante continued. "I used my contacts to investigate and discovered the whole conspiracy. I tried to warn Marcus, but I didn't get there in time. Afterward, I knew he wouldn't spare you or the baby, so I found a way to alert the police." I listened with a mixture of indescribable emotions. I felt compassion for Dante's fate and admiration for his courage and righteousness. He had carried a burden too heavy, fighting alone against his own criminal father. "And now what do you plan to do?" I asked. Dante looked at me. In his eyes there was no longer hate, only a deep sadness. "They've already caught him. It's the price he has to pay. I will testify at the trial. I will tell the whole truth. Afterward, I'll leave here. I'll take my mother to a place very far away to start a new life, a life without the ghosts of the past." We sat in silence, finishing our now cold cups of tea. The story had come to an end. All secrets had been revealed. The wicked had paid for their crimes. The wounded had also found their own path. I knew that after this meeting, I probably wouldn't see Dante again. But his image, that of a silent hero, a son who dared to face evil even if that evil wore the face of his own father, would be forever etched in my memory. But life always holds surprises. As Dante and I were preparing to leave, my phone suddenly rang. It was Lieutenant Booker. His voice on the other end of the line was extremely urgent. "Kesha, come to the hospital right now. Something serious has happened." My heart shrank. "Marcus? Has something happened to Marcus?" "It's not Marcus," Booker replied with a rushed voice. "It's Vance Holloway. He has escaped from jail." Escaped. Those two words were like a lightning bolt that left me dazed. Holloway, the demon who had caused so much evil, who had been captured and should be in prison awaiting trial. How could he have escaped? Dante beside me also froze. His face paled, and the peace that had just appeared in his eyes was replaced by extreme tension. "I'm on my way," I replied to Booker, and hung up. "Let's go," Dante said with a determined voice. He took my hand and led me out of the coffee shop. Now is not the time to panic. He escaped. His first objective will be the most important witnesses, me, you, and possibly Marcus. Dante's words were like a bucket of cold water that returned my calm. It was true. Holloway was a cunning and ruthless fox. He wouldn't hesitate to use any means to silence those who could testify against him. My son Marcus and I were in real danger. We ran to the car and headed straight to the hospital. During the entire ride, Dante didn't stop making calls, probably to his contacts to get more information. Beside him, I felt my heart in a fist, fear coursing through my body. I didn't fear for myself. I feared for Marcus and for the child I carried inside. When we arrived at the hospital, the area was already cordoned off by police. Lieutenant Booker was waiting for us at the entrance with a serious face. As soon as he saw us, he approached quickly. "Thank God you're okay," he said with evident relief. "What happened? How could he escape?" asked Dante directly. Booker sighed. "He faked a heart attack. He used the transfer to the hospital to get attended to. He colluded with some of his men waiting outside. They attacked the officers guarding him and fled. They had it all planned." "And Marcus?" I asked in anguish. "He is safe," Booker reassured us. "We have placed 24-hour surveillance on his room. He won't be able to get close. But the problem is we can't protect you forever. Holloway is loose. He is like a cornered beast. He will become extremely dangerous." Dante clenched his fists. "So what do we do? Wait here for him to come?" "No," denied Booker. "We have to get ahead of him. We have to figure out where he might go, the place he considers safest." The safest place? Where could a fugitive hide? While everyone thought, I remembered a detail from the conversation I had heard on Marcus's phone. The recording between Eleanor and her brother. They had mentioned a place. "The old warehouse at the docks," I said suddenly. All eyes turned to me. I remember in the recording, my mother-in-law and her brother talked about taking care of my husband if the plan failed. They said they would take him to an old warehouse in the industrial district of Detroit. It was one of my father-in-law's old illegal bases of operation. Booker and Dante looked at each other, a spark of understanding in their eyes. "It's very possible," Booker said. "It's an ideal place to hide, discreet, and with an easy escape route via the water if discovered." Without hesitation, Booker grabbed his radio and ordered a special operations team to head secretly to the warehouse district to investigate. "Now the important thing is that you two are in a safe place," Booker told us. "We'll take you to a police safe house." I shook my head. "No, Lieutenant, I'm not moving from here. I want to stay with Marcus." I looked toward his room with determination. He just got his memory back. His mental state is very fragile. I can't leave him alone at a moment like this. "But it's very dangerous," objected Booker. Dante intervened. "Lieutenant, let her stay. I will stay with her. I won't let Holloway get near them." Seeing our determination, Booker finally agreed. He reinforced security at the hospital, turning the hallway leading to Marcus's room into an impassable zone. That night, the hospital plunged into an atmosphere of suffocating tension. Dante, 2 police officers, and I stood guard in Marcus's room. We had informed him of Holloway's escape. He said nothing, only squeezed my hand tightly, eyes full of worry. No one could sleep all night. Every strange noise in the hallway made us jump. Almost at dawn, when exhaustion began to set in, the radio of one of the agents came to life. It was Booker's voice, urgent and breathless. "Team 1 reporting. We have located Holloway and his accomplices in warehouse number 7. The suspects are armed and putting up strong resistance. Requesting reinforcements immediately." My heart shrank. The final confrontation had begun. But what would be the result? Would justice be done, or would Holloway escape once again to continue sowing terror? Our lives seemed to be decided in a place far away. The radio went silent, but its echo resonated in the small room. We looked at each other, eyes full of anxiety and a pinch of hope. The battle was coming to an end, but we didn't know how it would finish. Marcus squeezed my hand hard. He said nothing, but I could see the extreme worry in his gaze. Dante also stood up, looking toward the door as if he wanted to run out to help. "Stay here, Dante," I said, trying to stay calm. "We can't do anything else now. We can only wait." We waited like that. Every second seemed like a century. Outside, the sky began to lighten. The faint light of dawn filtered through the window, but it couldn't dispel the heavy atmosphere of the room. Almost an hour later, the radio sounded again. This time, it was Booker's voice, tired but with an unmistakable tone of relief. Suspect Vance Holloway and all his accomplices have been detained. Case closed. We let out a collective sigh of relief. A huge weight seemed to lift from our shoulders. Marcus hugged me tight. His tears fell on my shoulder. "I thought I would never see you again. Neither you nor the baby," he said between sobs. "I'm sorry, Kesha. I'm sorry for putting you through so much." I stroked his back. My own tears ran down my cheeks. "It's okay, my love. As long as you're alive, as long as we're together, that's all that matters." Dante watched us, smiling, a smile of true peace. A few days later, Marcus was discharged. We decided not to return to the old house, a place full of too many painful memories. We moved to a safer place, a small apartment in another building, under police protection until everything was completely resolved. Vance Holloway and his accomplice's trial was held shortly after, with irrefutable evidence, from Marcus's recording to Dante's, mine, and Eleanor's own testimonies. He and his henchmen received maximum sentences for murder, fraud, and organized crime. Eleanor and her brother also received additional sentences for complicity. Finally, justice had been done. I gave birth to my son in a normal maternity ward, without luxury or ostentation. He was a beautiful, chubby boy, the spitting image of Marcus. He looked at him with eyes full of tears. "He is our miracle, Kesha," he said with a voice charged with emotion. After everything, Marcus and I decided to start from scratch. He didn't return to his old firm. With the little money we had left and Dante's help, he opened a small carpentry shop, specializing in handcrafted furniture. He said he wanted a simple life, without more intrigues or ambitions. I went back to my job as a teacher at a preschool near home. Our life was no longer luxurious like before, but it was full of laughter and peace. Dr. Vance? No, the doctor who helped me, the real one, became an indispensable member of our small family. He visited us often, taking care of my health and the babies like an adoptive grandfather. Tyrone, Marcus's best friend, also came often. And Dante. Dante found a new job, a new life, free from the ghosts of the past. He and his mother moved from the city to a quiet coastal town, seeking the serenity they so deserved. Years passed. Our son grew up healthy and smart. Marcus and I often told him our story, the storms we had overcome and how we had done it together. We taught him about kindness, courage, and that justice always prevails, however long it takes. One afternoon, while we were all in the small garden of our new house, Marcus took my hand. "Kesha, do you remember what I told you once? If we're ever really tired, we'll retire to St. Saviour's Retreat." I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. "I remember. But now I feel I don't need to retire anywhere, because wherever we are, as long as I hold you and our son, I have already found my peace." Marcus hugged us both tightly. We looked at each other, and in our eyes there was no longer fear or pain, only love, understanding, and an unshakable faith in the future. If you liked my story and want to hear more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support me, you can do it through Super Thanks. It would mean a lot. In the comments, tell me which city you're watching from and what time it is, so I can see how far my story reaches. I've added 2 more life stories on the screen just for you. Click one now and let's keep spending time together. Much love. See you soon.